Hello everyone, Glass Half Dead here with 19 commonly asked rules questions I see every new player asking, and I'm here to quash them for you as quickly as I can to get your games running smoothly. Now look, if you need line of sight help, check out this video first, but let's get into some basics I see a lot of people getting wrong. What makes this a beginner mistakes video instead of an advanced mistakes video is that generally, a beginner mistake is clearly written in the book, but poorly placed or a bit confusing. Advanced mistakes generally mean multiple cross-referencing is needed to figure things out. Advanced mistakes will be coming soon, and these two videos plus my line of sight video are going to be resources I point to in my full how to play kill team video, but for now, let's look at the most common beginner mistakes I see being made, yes, all 19 of them. Everything I'm about to tell you has been triple checked and is correct, but do note that while I'm giving you the correct general rule, if there is specific text countering what I say, then that supersedes the general rule. An obvious example is the mission specific consecration rule on APL generation. If you have any rules questions, jump into my Discord where a proper back and forth debate can take place. Okay, let's get into it, but of course first, if you're already subscribed to my channel, I'd like to give you a big double hello. If you want a wholesome pleasantry in the next video, subscribe, like, leave a comment and check out my Patreon, thanks. Speaking of Patreon, however, none of this would be possible without them, and they are the names you see on the screen right now. Absolute legends. Let's start big with orders. Orders change when? Orders change when you activate the model, not at the beginning of a new turn. This means if you go loud one turn, then you'll be in a vulnerable position next turn. However, when you deploy your models, you set their order and they keep that order for the whole of turn 1. Free actions. A free action allows you to perform an action without it costing any of your operatives APL, but it must still be a legal action for you to perform. A free shoot action, for example, doesn't let you shoot twice. How APL works. APL, the number of actions you can make per activation, is decided when you activate the model. This is always dictated by the APL stat on your datasheet. Modifiers to your APL can happen from a ploy, an ability, or the stun mechanic. Abilities like the Commando Knob's Get It Done ability occur upon activation and so happen simultaneously, which means they can be applied. Most importantly, APL modifiers have a limit of plus or minus 1, and they last until the end of the operative's current or next activation, not until the end of the turning point. You can never reroll a reroll. There are many ways to gain access to a reroll, whether it be a ploy or an ability, but no matter what happens, you can never reroll a reroll. But if something allows you to retain a dice, that is changing the face, not rerolling. CP reroll. The CP reroll is only for attack and defense dice. Also, it's the only ploy you can use more than once per turning point. Ploys can only be used once per turning point, did you know? That's right, prime examples of this are, for example, Necrons trying to use reanimation protocols on more than one model a turn, or Commandos using just a scratch more than once. Can't be done. Do note that ploys before the game start are happening outside of a turn, so can be used multiple times. Effects upon a retained dice. In my very first video after I had the core book in my hands at 30 minutes and 50 seconds in, I point out that knowing when a dice is retained is going to be important, and it sure is. Certain effects occur as soon as the dice is rolled, unable to be affected by anything your opponent does. Perfect example here is mortal wounds. They take effect as soon as the critical hit is retained. This is why sometimes a critical hit will look like it does less damage than normal on the datasheet. That's because the mortal wound it does cannot be blocked by anything. AP is armor piercing, and it removes a dice from your defense pool. It does not affect the number on the dice that you need to roll. Also, AP doesn't stack. This is mostly a holdover from 40k, but I've seen newer players confused too. APX does not stack. Likewise, the critical hit rule of P1 is identical to having AP1. They could have called P1 AP1. It's just a differentiation between the special rule and the critical hit rule, AP always being applied, P being applied when a critical hit lands. But again, no stacking of these effects. You always pick the highest number AP, which is currently 2, but hypothetically a 3 may one day exist. Invulnerable saves are a save that isn't affected by AP. This means that you can still roll all of your defense dice, but the dice face you need to roll will be your invuln save number, not your regular armor save number. For example, this melter into this Custodes with a storm shield. The melter has AP2, which will take the Custode from 3 defense dice needing 2s to save, down to only 1 defense dice needing a 2 to save. But if the Custode chooses to use their invulnerable save, they can roll all 3 of their defense dice still, but will need to roll a 4 on those dice instead of a 2. Also, you always have the option to use or not use the invulnerable save. For example, a Custodian with a 2-up save and a 4-up invulnerable should still use his normal 2-up save against AP1, but should then go to his 4-up invuln against AP2. Talking of defense dice, remember that 2 defense dice can block a crit, but in melee combat you cannot use 2 hits to block a crit. Talking of melee combat, after you've both rolled your attack dice so you can see what each other has, you then alternate your decisions, starting with whoever charged. Something I see a lot of players doing is thinking that a parry can stop the damage from the previous attack going through, and that's not the case. A parry simply removes a strike from the opponent's pool of dice. Once they've chosen to hit you, that dice is out of their pool, so cannot be affected. So if your model has so few wounds remaining that a single hit from the opponent will kill them, and they charge you, their first hit will go through and you can't stop it. If a ploy happens in the strategic phase, the action takes place as soon as it's played, unless the ploy says otherwise. For example, your entire team makes a dash action from the veteran guardsman's into the breach, allows the entire team to make a free dash immediately. But something like Craftworld's Fleet stipulates when it happens and uses the phrase until the end of the turning point, showing that it continues to work outside of the strategic phase. Visibility is not line of sight. Visibility is a line drawn from your model's head to any part of the enemy model. After that, you work out cover lines, which is base to base. If both visibility and cover lines allow it, then you have line of sight. Vantage points are crazy strong and dominate every battlefield, until you realize that vantage points only remove light cover, not heavy cover. This rule was missed by just about everyone for a few weeks after the rules released, but it's true. If you're on a conceal and behind light cover, a vantage point is the bane of your existence, but behind a nice sturdy heavy cover wall, you're safe. Of course, to be clear for those that haven't watched my line of sight video yet, if you're on an engage order you can still be shot. You'll also still retain a cover save dice though. Fly isn't a diagonal move, it's a free move infinitely up or down, and then you always count your full horizontal distance. Note that you don't ignore terrain, so if you're inside a building, you would still need to move out from under it before moving in the direction you want. You don't need to fight after you charge. You can charge just to tie up a model. Your model is always in range of itself, but it can also always see itself. This might trip you up when you have a banner or are using a specific ability. Although the always within range of itself is called out, it never specifically says you can see yourself, and then the wording on different banners is sometimes inconsistent, so you might think they mean different things. And, for example, in Warcry, a model is never visible to itself, but that's not the case here. And apparently, the difference in wording between banners is intentional, but it is meant for how it affects other models, not the banner bearer itself. Finally, rule explanation number 19 is archetypes. Seek & destroy, security, infiltration and recon, plus a possible 3 from your own faction. When you select a fire team or multiple fire teams, they have their archetypes listed next to their fireteam name. These are the archetypes you have access to when you deploy. They are inclusive, not exclusive, so if you are taking Tyranid warriors at a swarm fireteam, even though the Tyranid warriors cannot take recon, the swarm can, and so you can choose to have those warriors working towards recon objectives. You take your deck of 6 cards, and that's your TAC ops for the mission. If you're playing an artisanal team, you do exactly the same. Pick a valid archetype, and then look at your faction specific TAC ops, decide if you want to put 0, 1, 2 or 3 into the archetype deck, and remove enough of the default cards so that you have exactly 6 cards, no more, no less. Obviously this was all super quick, but if you want some real in-depth explanations of more complex rules that will help you figure out rules for yourself in the future, then check out my upcoming 5 Rules Mistakes Advanced, where I'll cover the difference between an action and an attack, the key to understanding climb and drop moves, measuring through 3D space, how indirect interacts with cover, and just how highly specific special rules are worded. I hope you found this a useful video, and if you've made it all the way to the end, please consider sharing this with other players that are trying to learn the rules. This has been Glass Half Dead. I hope you've had a good day and continue to have a good day. Goodbye.